The Chinese Communist Party is without question the most powerful political institution in the world. They have complete and total authority over the world's second largest economy, military force, and population. The extent of their control also goes much further than even a completely unchecked government in the West, as they operate in fields that normal governments just don't. They are also, understandably, a group that causes a lot of anxieties around the world because unlike a government in the USA, which at least in theory has checks and balances on how it conducts itself, the CCP is a bit of a black box. What goes on behind closed doors isn't dared questioned by the media, and policies are decided well before it comes to anything as silly as a vote. The party is also an institution within the institution of the government itself. It has over 99 million members, many holding key positions of power, not only in elected roles, but also with appointments across various branches and levels of government, as well as in a vast web of state-owned and even private enterprises. It's no secret that loyal party members often get special favours and treatment in business, which can make them tremendously wealthy. This is the most billionaires ever captured in a single photograph. There are around 100 down there serving as officials of the 20th Communist Party Congress. And those are the ones that we know about, because as we'll explore later, there are some good reasons why they might not want to gloat too much about that. Either way, it's easy to see why the size and scope of this organisation is a bit unsettling, and one of the simplest reasons why is because it's hard to tell exactly how it operates. Who is the boss of who outranks what's the difference between the National People's Congress and the National Party Congress? Is a low-level Congress member more important than a provincial governor? We have at least a basic idea of this hierarchy within our own economies, as well as the general checks and balances that are in place, but of course, China is different. Not only at the heights of government, but also in general pragmatic day-to-day functions. So, what is the management hierarchy of the Chinese government? How does this authority actually play out in practice? And finally, if CCP members get so many advantages over their fellow countrymen, why doesn't everyone just join the party? Okay, so it probably comes as no surprise, but at the very top of the political hierarchy is one man, Xi Jinping. For international affairs, he is the Chinese head of state, and internally he is the paramount leader of the People's Republic of China. As a logical comparison, it would be easy to compare him to someone like the President of the United States, if they had no real political opposition and were allowed to serve indefinitely, but that's not entirely true. Xi's power actually comes from holding three positions. He is the state chairman of the People's Republic, as well as the chairman of the Central Military Commission. These roles are directly comparable to holding the office of President of the United States and being the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. These are clearly very powerful roles, but they aren't actually the ones that matter. The title that actually matters for Xi Jinping is that he is the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. This is a strange one, because it would be like if the chair of the Republican Party was actually the highest authority in the USA, whereas in reality they are more of a glorified marketing manager. In China though, this is where Xi Jinping's true power lies, because the state runs on a system where the Communist Party leads and the government executes. Put more simply, the CCP and its leadership decide on the direction of the country, and government institutions handle the administration to make that happen with a rubber stamp. Now, there's no hard and fast rule that the General Secretary of the CCP must appoint themselves to be the president, although, of course, they always have. If they wanted, they could appoint a patsy to handle the day-to-day administration of the president, although at this level it's prudent to hold on to roles even if they are largely ceremonial. Xi Jinping actually became the General Secretary of the party 4 months before he became president, and that's normally how it goes. This big red room that we're all familiar with, the Great Hall of the People, actually plays host to two separate political meetings, the People's National Congress and the Party National Congress. The National Party Congress only meets once every 5 years, and it hosts about 2,700 top party members who then vote on who is going to be the party secretary. While they are all officially members of the CCP, there are groups within this group, normally unofficially referred to as factions, that tend to want different things and will often push for different leadership. These factions are often regional. Jiang Zemin, one of Xi Jinping's predecessors for example, was supported by a group within the party unofficially referred to as the Shanghai clique. Of course, this factionality can be a dangerous game because voting for a new leader who is not successful puts them at risk of reprisals, and more on that later. Either way, to present a unified front, this infighting is kept as low-key as possible within the upper echelons of the party. Once a party secretary is nominated, they take the nomination to the People's Congress, which is held in the same room with many of the same people 4 months later to nominate the president. The People's Congress meets every year and effectively just rubber stamps into law what senior party officials decide. Part of the confusion between these two congressional meetings comes from the fact that they take place within the same room. It's possible, as an example, that the head of the Democratic Party could also be nominated to run for president at the Democratic National Convention, and in a hypothetical where there was no opposition, they would just get the job. But in China, it would be as if the Democratic National Convention was hosted in the Hall of Congress. So yeah, the real political decisions get made in the Party Congress, which happens once every 5 years, and then the People's Congress meets once every year to do what they are told, including electing the president that the party decides on. There are 2,977 current members of the People's Congress, which technically makes it the largest legislative group in the world, but because they only meet once a year, there is a significantly smaller group called the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of the People's Republic of China, and it only has 175 members nominated to represent the larger group and works year-round outside of certain holidays. One important side note is that despite the common misconception, the People's Congress, including the smaller Standing Committee, does actually have members from other political parties. Although, realistically, they are barely worth mentioning. They don't contest the CCP's power in any way, and they are largely ceremonial to give the impression that the people get a say in any of this. Now, the Party Congress also votes on other things outside of just who is going to be the General Secretary, and by extension the President. They also vote separately on the third title that Xi Jinping currently holds, the Chairman of the Central Military Commission. Usually whoever is voted in as the head of the party also gets given the role of chairman of the military commission, but not always. When Xi Jinping's predecessor Hu Jintao was elected to be the leader of the party in 2002, his predecessor before him, Jiang Zemin, maintained control of the military commission for another 2 years. Obviously today, despite the technicalities, Xi Jinping is firmly in control of the party, the military, and the administration of the government. The factions within the party that could challenge his leadership behind closed doors have also been effectively crushed, and Xi did this in what was probably one of his most daring political manoeuvres. Corruption in China. It's been known to happen. The overwhelming concentration of billionaires in the Party Congress didn't happen because the former communist revolutionaries were just really secretly good at business deep down. It happened because they were given special opportunities as the country was going through its rapid economic development. Corruption in China is generally treated like breaking the rules in an employee handbook. Everybody does it, everybody knows everybody does it, and the rules are only written down because it makes it easier to get rid of people when they're out of line on other issues. Xi Jinping's anti-corruption crackdown was pretty openly a crackdown on any groups within the party that could oppose his leadership. So yeah, today he is the big dog and holds all of the positions and has all of the support to be the paramount leader of China. He can effectively enact policy by decree, and nobody is realistically going to challenge him. However, there are also the practical considerations that no single man would ever be able to run the Chinese government alone. So a lot of that power needs to be delegated down, and as something of a recurring theme, the way that power is distributed is different. There are really 4 pillars that hold up the hierarchy here. The ranks of the military, the ranks of the government administration, the ranks of the party, as well as the leadership of thousands of state-owned enterprises. The military is probably the most straightforward. At the top is the Central Military Commission chaired by Xi Jinping and directed by 4 other high-ranking military officials. Now, just to make things needlessly confusing, there are actually 2 Central Military Commissions. The People's Central Military Commission and the CCP Central Military Commission. They are, for all effective purposes, exactly the same thing though. They are directed by the same people, they operate out of the same building and command the same forces. The only reason for the double up is largely for foreign affairs. It's useful to have a military body representing the nation rather than just the party. Anyway, beneath the Central Military Commission is the People's Liberation Army, the People's Armed Police, and the People's Militia. The People's Armed Police are a distinct group from the People's Police Force. They are a semi-military organisation that just happens to have law enforcement powers, whereas the People's Police are a more ordinary national police force. The People's Militia is effectively the nation's reservists, and they most often get used for things like disaster relief. Then there is the People's Liberation Army, which despite what the name suggests, actually serves the Chinese Communist Party rather than the people of China. Within the PLA there are 4 branches: the Ground Force, the Air Force, the Naval Force, and the Rocket Force. It's probably worth noting that the Rocket Force is not the equivalent of the US Space Force. It was actually previously their artillery force, and it just focuses on long-range projected munitions, where that kind of stuff is integrated within other military forces in countries like the USA. The People's Liberation Army also has 4 arms, technically separate from the services, that overlap and support each function. They are the Aerospace Force, and this one is the equivalent of the US Space Force, which is tasked with supporting service operations from space. There is also the Cyberspace Force, dedicated to preparing for and preventing cyber warfare, the Information Support Force, basically the IT department, and the Logistics Support Force, which is in charge of making sure all of the services are fed and fueled. Again, each one of these arms has a commander for day-to-day operations, as well as a political commissar directly appointed by the party to ensure that operations are in line with the party's grander vision, or more realistically, so nobody gets out of line. This is often a strange double-up because every high-ranking military officer in the PLA is also a member of the party, even though there is technically no requirement for them to be. Now, below that, China has relatively normal military ranks today. But a fun little fact is that during the Cultural Revolution, Mao considered formal military ranks to be bourgeois, so they were abolished. Like everything from the Cultural Revolution, this was a fantastic idea that was well considered, and as a surprise to absolutely nobody, the idea was reconsidered after a crippling defeat against Vietnam. Anyway, the entire way down the military chain of command, there are also corresponding party overseers who are not technically in charge of troops, but can override the commands of their respective commanding peer. So that's the military. Now, the state and party pillars can be considered together. For every state organisation, there is a corresponding party organisation that either oversees or is exactly the same thing. President Xi is also the party secretary, beneath him is the Standing Committee of the People's Congress, and the party equivalent, where the real power lies, is the Politburo Standing Committee, which is a council of 7 men who really make the day-to-day decisions. Below that is the Party Congress and the People's Congress, who meet every 5 years and every year respectively, and at these levels a lot of positions are filled by the same people on both sides. But below that it becomes less common. Underneath that, the People's Congress appoints ministers to manage specific functions of the government like education, medicine and infrastructure. China is also a very big and very diverse place, so a lot of functions are broken up into provincial governments. The management of an area like Shanghai is going to be very different from somewhere more rural. These regional governors are appointed by the People's Congress, and the Politburo will appoint a corresponding party secretary to watch over them. Now again, apologies, but even these names are a little bit confusing because realistically the state governor is really more of the secretary. They are allowed to handle the day-to-day administration of their province, but they report directly to the party secretary, who is actually the big boss and handles the big picture stuff. Again, the party leads, the government executes. The party secretary is of course a party member, but at this level governors are always party members as well, even though it's not technically legally required. Being a provincial governor is also seen as a stepping stone to becoming a provincial party secretary, so even though these are technically state and party equivalents, in practice it's relatively clear that one is higher than the other. Below the provincial and ministerial leaders, there are thousands of individual departments and organisations. The Ministry of Education, for example, has about 40 sub-departments, all with their own administrative leaders and corresponding party overseers. They also operate 75 different universities across the country, and yes, there is significant party oversight on that as well. Then, the fourth pillar that is often overlooked is state-owned enterprises, which in practice perform a blended role of private sector market participants and government functions. We address this in a lot more detail in our video over on EE, but something like China Airlines is expected to operate at a profit and serve customer demand, but it's also expected to serve government functions if and when they are required. This could be something as simple as operating unprofitable but strategically important routes, all the way up to handing over one of their 747s for temporary refits when a senior government official needs to travel overseas. Every one of the 300,000 or so state-owned enterprises are carefully overseen by the party, and trusted members will be appointed to board seats to oversee operations. Particularly large or important state-owned enterprises almost exclusively have senior management positions staffed by party members as well. So yeah, that's how the CCP controls basically every major function within China. Its complexity is intentional. It means that there are lots of important-sounding job titles to go around, and everyone has someone watching them. A lot of the efficiencies they gain by not being answerable to the people are lost again with this immense web of bureaucracy. But that's okay. It keeps everybody in line, and everybody is in charge of their little corner of the empire. So then, outwardly, it looks like to rise up through the ranks of basically anything in China, people need to be party members. Eventually, whether they're working for a company, the military, or a government department, they can only rise so far until doors close on non-party members. So then, why doesn't everyone just join the party? Even if they don't personally support Xi's unique brand of communism, there's not much they can do about it, so they may as well get a cushy job out of it, right? And yet, only 99 million people out of over 1.3 billion are party members. So what gives? Well, unlike in a democracy where political parties would love to get as many members as they possibly can, the CCP doesn't care about raw numbers. Being invited to join the party is a privilege that needs to be earned, and it comes with heightened scrutiny, background checks and expectations. It also comes with major trade-offs. It makes doing business or travelling internationally harder, and raises the chances that some brain-dead senator will accuse them of being Singaporean. For it to really be worth it, most people need to be relatively advanced in their respective careers anyway, and then it does become a logical career step. Unfortunately, people can't just join the party and expect those sweet government contracts and cushy postings to start coming their way. This also means that most party members are quite old, although for once that's actually something that China has in common with the rest of the world. We've made an entire video on why young people don't matter politically, And you should be able to click to that on your screen now. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.